Oh, yeah, we are live. Okay, so this is awesome. Welcome back, everyone. Apologies, we had a little technical issue here with getting in treatment started, but we have our panelists and they are here and things are happening and things are moving. And we are excited to talk about everything that is creative development and material and scripts and all that wonderful stuff about pitching and putting things together creatively. And we have some amazing folks here to talk about all of that. Which we are very excited about, so long as I can find my talking points. So this is the point of the afternoon where I think that cafecito is going to help. But yes, we have some really cool folks. We have a new addition to the MMFM family. She is actually a veteran entertainment journalist and screenwriter, Kate O'Hare, joining us today. We also have someone that you may know from previous MMFMs, a very accomplished screenwriter as well, TV writer, producer, showrunner. He's worked all across the board, done some amazing work, working on a really cool project now with Netflix. Ethan Banville is here with us today. And of course, our local resident screenwriting guru, the one and only Joe Garcia, will also be joining us. We're going to be trying to get Saran out of Los Angeles as well. She's having a little bit of a technical issue, but hopefully by the time we get to her, she'll be back on the show. If not, we do have an amazing lineup of talent. This is the Murderer's Row. This is our writer's room. This is In Treatment. We are MMFM 2021 virtual conference. So let's bring in our first guest, Kate O'Hare. Welcome to the show, Kate.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Greetings from Los Angeles. And I apologize in advance if an emergency vehicle screams by. The city never sleeps.
Yes, I hear you. It's like New York with a better tan.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and some of the work that you do and now as a screenwriter.
Well, as a longtime entertainment journalist, as a staff writer for the Tribune Syndicate, so my stuff went to newspapers all over the country and strange, random other countries. So I spent a lot of time doing interviews with creative types and going on sets and locations. That's primarily what I did. And then writing about it. And then I went to work for Variety for a while. And now I work at a production company and they just optioned my first movie. So I'm edging into that new world. So right now I have a movie under option. And actually, in terms of treatments, I just had a chat today that has made me rethink one of the current projects. And obviously, I don't have time to write a script like in the next day. So I think I'll be writing a treatment.
Wait, it takes more than, are you saying it takes more than a day to write a script?
I'm afraid so. There's a lot of typing involved. So I'm a longtime writer, mostly a short story writer and so on. And so transitioning into scripts, it's something I always wanted to do, but as a journalist, it's a little ethically difficult when you're covering the industry. But now I can do it. And so I'm diving right in. I've got stuff out there, having meetings with people, and it's very exciting.
Cool. Well, I'm glad that, we're meeting you. I'm glad that you're part of the MMFM conference this year. And I want to meet some of your fellow panelists, and then we'll come back and have a fun group chat and create our little virtual writer's room in about 10 minutes. So let's bring in our next guest now. I want to hear from Ethan Banville.
Hello.
You're in the hot seat, the hot gamers.
The hot seat.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
the comfort seat for spending 12 to 15 hours a day on Zoom calls for the last year and a half. So yes, it's an effective chair.
So it must be a nice change of pace to be on stage 10 and not Zoom, right?
Yes, it's completely different. I mean, well, you're on it, so it makes it a heck of a lot better than the majority of calls because you're here with smiles and not with notes, JL. So
absolutely. Yeah. Well, I can throw in some notes if you want. No.
Please.
There you go. I'll save that for Joe Garcia. But no, yes. Let's talk a little bit about you. Obviously, thank you so much again for doing this panel. You've been a longtime MMFMer, one of our resident gurus as well, and all the time that you've contributed to previous panels. But tell us a little bit about what's up with you. What have you been doing? What have you been working on since the last conference?
Since the last conference, let's see. So I've been doing, I was in a development deal with Netflix, which show I created with a partner that I met through a great producer who used to work at Miramax in Dimension Films. And we created a show and shopped around town and kind of typical Hollywood story. Everybody told us that we wouldn't get it made. And then we went to Netflix and they were like, no, we want to do it. So we went into development, I think I want to say in 2019, mid 2019. And then we got actually picked up to series August of 2020. So we just wrapped writing on that. And now we're into watching fully animated episodes and just going through the whole production process, from animatics and last minute changes and redraws and, kind of everything in between. So that's been taking up the majority of my time. I also started working with an app that a lot of people know called Calm, which is like a meditation app, but they also do these things called sleep stories for adults and kids. So I've been writing sleep stories for them. And then it looks like I'm actually going to start teaching a pitching class at the Los Angeles Film School, I think next month. And I'll be doing that monthly for the foreseeable future. So, just keeping busy and trying to get some other projects going, of course, as always.
Oh, yeah. All you've been doing is writing animation shows and working with Netflix and writing for a sleep app, and you're going to be teaching. So, you've got to get more on your plate, Ethan.
Yes, exactly. That is the biggest lesson I would say for everyone to take away from MMFM is you can never sit back. You constantly, while you have the job that you've been trying to get for a decade, you need to be thinking about how you're going to get your next job, because the life of working in this business is constantly chasing down the next project to do and to work on. And if you ask any successful person in Hollywood, they will tell you that's exactly that. It's all about establishing relationships and finding those great stories and finding people to partner with to help tell those stories and get them out to the people who can fund them to be produced.
Yeah, no, that's really great advice. And we're gonna definitely also sort of follow up on that in the group session, but I want to bring in some of your fellow writing colleagues. So I'm just going to do this little round robin and then we'll go right back into the group. Hang on one second. Joe Garcia.
Yes.
You are now in the hot, well, you're not, I don't know if you're sitting or what, but you.
I'm inventing my own yoga pose at this moment.
I love it. So tell us a little bit about, Joe, in terms of, you've also, much like Ethan, have been quite busy over the last year. What have you been working on?
Well, as one of the few people who can say this, thanks to the pandemic, I've been able to sit down and just put my head down and just write. There's a lot of stories that we've been kicking around with a lot of MMFMers actually, that we've had the time to actually flesh out and take from the proverbial back of the napkin to, treatments, in many cases, a full-blown pilot or a feature draft. And now we're in the process of, shopping those around. We've gotten some interesting attachments on some of those projects. And then I also took the time out to create this thing called Table Read Theater. Since a lot of the people in Hollywood they're not fans of reading, and the people who should read on their behalf have been furloughed or laid off or are no longer available to them. This is a way of getting them exposed to the material without having to trudge through 35 pages for a sitcom or 50-something pages for an hour long.
Right.
We provide them a video of a table read of a particular script, and then they can sort of absorb that material in a much more comfortable manner. And we're getting a lot of really good traction with that, as you well know.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's a great program with Table Read. We're excited to be a part of it. And, we had our second round competition recently and just kind of working on all that stuff. So that's really awesome. And so, again, you've been quite a busy man and working on so much stuff and also helping us with these programs and everything else. So I think we're going to have an exciting conversation.
I bet we are.
Switch to the group discussion now. And bring in our full slate of panelists here just to see if we can get this conversation going. And I am going to bring in our three friends for now. So welcome back to the show, everyone. Ethan, and we have Kate, and we have Joe Garcia.
Joe, sound check.
Sound check.
Yeah. Old habits.
Inside joke, guys. Sorry.
Yes. Sound check. I think someone needs to write that. That could be a Comedy Central pilot right there. So, all right. So let's start with the basics. What's the difference between, some of these words that kind of get bantered around the industry, like the pitch, the treatment, the pages. How much of that is necessary, and what do you actually need in order to be a part of the of this industry of creative development? And any one of you guys can just jump in there.
So I would say it changes. The needs of networks and studios kind of change consistently. The one thing that doesn't change, of course, is being able to communicate your story and the hook of your idea kind of as quickly as and efficiently as possible. When it comes to features, treatments are definitely what is handed around the most, as far as what they call leave behinds after your kind of pitch meeting, which summarizes your movie, and so they can run that up the ladder to the executives who have green light power. When it comes to television, if it's a limited series, treatments also work well, but most of the time they're looking for pitch pages, which is, kind of your world, your characters, and then a summary of a season or an episode or something to that extent. So it really does depend on the type of project that you're pitching, and kind of knowing who the executives are, that you have, and how they can digest that information. If you know someone has a historically short attention span, treatment is always the best way to go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, sometimes less is more, right?
Yes.
It also puts a burden on you to read the room, because, you also have to make sure that the person you're pitching to is engrossed in your story. Telling it in a different way, if it's a lousy story, doesn't really do anything for you. You have to, if you haven't engaged the person to whom you're pitching, a pitch deck, pitch pages, carrier pigeon, whatever, it's not going to do you any favors. So don't think so much of, or at least not at first, don't think so much of how am I going to convey this story, what mechanism am I going to use to convey that story? Think of, am I conveying it well? And is it a good story worth conveying?
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah.
And I've heard very successful screenwriters say that they will actually, they're very brave for doing this, I must say, but they will literally go into a Starbucks and say, hey, I'll buy you a cup of coffee if you just listen to this thing I'm working on, and just try and get the reaction of that person and see if it excites them. And if they can get a random stranger to listen to them for more than 15 seconds, they know that they actually have something that hooks people in. And that puts you in a much better position, because then you're going in not having just heard it in your head. You're going in knowing, oh, I've got something engaging here, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to, I've dialed this down to the point where the executive should pay attention.
Right.
Yeah, I've done that verbally with people. If you can tell them the gist of the story and their eyes don't glaze over.
Yes.
Or better yet, they lean forward and say, and then what happens?
The lean in, yes.
But being a journalist, I went to some of the writers that I know from over the years to see what they thought of treatments. And the general consensus was, and this is TV people I was talking to, because that's mostly my world, so I'll leave it to Ethan to know about features and Joe, that if you're not an established writer, so they don't know whether you can write a script and execute it, treatment is not going to be the way you introduce yourself. You're going to have to write it. But if you're an established writer and they know you're good and they know you can execute, and you just want to get them your latest idea quickly, then yes, that's an efficient way to do it, because they have no doubt that you can execute. But if you're just starting out, write the script to show you can do it. Because ideas are a dime a dozen. Ideas are easy. Execution is hard. And the people who can execute are the ones who work. Ideas,
and to Kate's,
they have a million of them.
Yeah, to Kate's point, it's almost like a 1-2 punch. So you hook them with the idea, and then once you have their attention, they're going to be more apt to read that script that you've spent the time writing. So you better have that available, when, and if you're not a screenwriter and but you're a producer working with screenwriters, well, then you better have your team together going in so that you have all your ducks in a row, so that when they give you that opportunity to present that thing to them, you have it all on a silver platter for them.
Yeah, Hollywood is not fond of vaporware. That may get you by for a certain amount of time in Silicon Valley, but if you don't have something to hand somebody that's concrete,
Right.
the whole train is going to stop right there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. No, you're right. And I think it's about the idea, it's about the passion, but more importantly, it's about the execution and who can execute it. Because, we just had a great conversation with Jay Rowe, who's the head of physical production over there at HBO. And I guess the parallel I'm trying to draw is that what he's looking for are professionals that can execute. And I think that really does start in the writer's room, right? So why would I hire a novice writer, versus someone that knows how to write a story or has done so professionally and can do it at a high level, right? Why is it any different?
Yeah, and you can actually, the place I've found in my career now that I've been doing this for so long is, those young writers who have that great talent and idea, but the studio goes, well, I'm not just going to hand that person $20 million. We need to bring in someone that gives us some security that will work with this young hotshot and help show them the ropes of how to make your idea producible for the budget and the schedule that we have. So you can actually also go about it that way. If you are a young person trying to break in, if you can find a person with experience and they hear your idea and they go, ooh, that's good. And I'm actually doing this with a bunch of different people, a few that I've met through speaking at the LA Film School, because when you hear a good story, you want to be part of it. And especially when, these days there's a lot more people from kind of underrepresented communities being able to kind of get into spaces where people like me can hear their stories. And then of course we just want to go, hey, how can we help? Right. Then it benefits both of us. I think a friend of mine calls it like selfish altruism, where it's like we're getting to help their voices be heard, but we're also getting a job out of it. So it's kind of like a best of both worlds, So, but it again comes down to what Kate was saying. It's all about that good, engaging story, and also the story that they haven't heard before, which is, I think, the biggest difference is when you find that piece of gold that and you just go, how is this not a movie? How is this not a TV show? Yeah, that's the thing to concentrate your efforts on. That's always the way to go.
I've also found it helpful for me, luckily because of the job I had and that I worked for a big syndicate. I could pretty much go on the set of any show I wanted. And it might be a mini series, and it might be a science fiction show up in Canada. It might be a reality show in Panama. It might be a simple reality show. It might be, a high-end HBO series or whatever it is. And actually see how it's done. See how hard what you put on pages to turn into reality, and then watch the compromises that happen every day as people try to like, you could write two enemies clash. Well, that's several $1 million and probably 2 weeks of filming. And so, it's also know your market. I mean, as you're like, say you're writing a treatment and you're fleshing your story out. And I'm thinking of, where do I want this movie to go in this case? And how big of a budget am I likely to have? So I know from the one that was optioned, there were a few scenes in it that everyone balked and said, those would be too expensive to shoot. And I'm like, okay, I got a fix for that. I can achieve the same thing with a simpler setting. That's just as much fun. You have to know, like, are you writing a movie you think, for cable television? Are you trying to write an indie feature? Are you trying to write a big feature? What are you trying to do? And to put all the great ideas in there, but don't get silly. Right. Don't put in things that, people are going to look at that. I remember reading, it was a spec script for the X-Files. And it was Tim Minear's spec script for the X-Files. And obviously he's a tremendously talented writer and has done really, really well. But they never, this actually got him a job on Angel. So I'm reading the spec script and he comes and he goes, what do you think? I'm like, well, Tim, I think the X-Files would have bought this if there were more 7-foot tall writers and trained porcupines. Like, they're never going to, it was good enough writing that it got him a job, but it was never going to be an episode of the X-Files. Think about it. If I have an animal, how many scenes is the animal in? If I have a kid, how many scenes is the kid in? Am I asking for the moon when my budget will get me as far as Pacoima?
Right. Yeah, and kind of to Kate's point, it really is something to think about in the writing process, because if your idea, if you believe your idea is contingent on some big blockbustery billion-dollar scene, you haven't worked on your characters enough, and your story is not coming from your characters, which it needs to be, because ultimately they're going to want to make a movie or TV show about an interesting character that they haven't seen before, because that's who we're going to follow through the series. You know, and we were joking the other day, like Game of Thrones was not about a world with dragons and stuff. It was a show about the fights between different factions to take control.
Chess game.
It's a chess game, exactly. And there's that great scene that one of the other panelists would show from that of Tyrion with Varys talking about what is power. And it's all like, you know, just basically a short man can cast a very large shadow kind of thing. But if they didn't spend the time on that show developing the Starks and all the other characters, you wouldn't have been following along. It would have just been like a confusing muddle of different landscapes of people. But so to that point, if you're finding like, oh man, this is not something that's producible in the space that I'm looking at because I'm pitching this to an indie studio, then you may want to kind of go back and try and figure out how to do it. The story I always tell is the Vince Gilligan story on Breaking Bad, when he had a scene where Jesse is going to try to steal his RV back from the impound lot. And initially he was jumping the fence and getting attacked by a guard dog. That was going to cost $15,000 and it was going to take all day to shoot.
And a trained dog and a backup
producer
dog.
Said,
and
the trainer and the producer said, you know, look, we can do it, but we're going to have to cut something somewhere else. And Vince said, you know what, let me see what I can do. He went back. He knew Jesse. He knew Jesse was this kind of comically awkward character. So he ended up doing it that Jesse boosts himself up on a porta potty and ends up falling into the blue, nasty liquid within the porta potty and then emerges like that. So and that costs like $3,500, like, you know, and a wardrobe reset for Jesse. But it made it actually a much more impactful moment because it was a character moment versus any other character who hopped the fence would have gotten attacked by that dog. Whereas Jesse would have chosen and not thought through, because that was his character. He never thought ahead. He didn't think through what could happen by standing on a precarious porta potty, and he paid the price.
Right.
Well, like when the lockdown happened last spring, I set myself the task of watching all of the Marvel movies in order.
Wow.
So these are some of the biggest spectacles in movies.
Yeah.
But in the end, after having watched them all in order, I worship Jon Favreau, by the way, if I hadn't before. But it's the character of Tony Stark. To me, in the end, it was Tony Stark's story. From this selfish, self-involved man to someone who sacrificed himself to save the world. And with all the whiz-bang, woo-ha, and all that stuff, that's what I remember.
Right.
That's because they didn't let the character get lost in the middle of all the stuff. I always think that I spend a lot of time thinking about my characters. I know a lot about them that's not on the page, doesn't need to be, but I know it. And because I know it, that affects how they talk and what they do. And I know their relationships with the other people. And it affects how they talk to them and how, if that person was talking to someone else versus talking to the main character. If you put the work in getting to know your people and what their problem is and what their challenges are, then you've got something to build on. You're not just stringing together randoms and then this and then this. It's like Joe has X problem. I actually learned this from Saran because she gave I wish she was here, because she gave a seminar. And it's sort of like guy going about his daily life, and then X happens. And then something happens because of what happens. I always quote, I was lucky enough to get tutored for a while by David Milch, who's a great TV producer and a Black Swan event. No one's going to sell John, I'm from Cincinnati, except David Milch. Look it up. But we were talking, really, I loved it. But we were talking about Lost one day, which was at lunch, which is a show he really didn't like at all. And his reasoning was that it's just throwing rocks in a pond. One event after a twist, after an event, after a twist, after an event. And so much left unexplored, and it bored him. And he said, the story is not in the rocks. The story is in the ripples. The story is not what happens, it's what happens because of what happens. And that's all character. I mean, even like your big action movies, whether you're watching ones I love like Twister, it's a story about a couple coming back together in the end. Other than that, it's just special. And the characters are fun. And they're each distinctive because that writer has taken the time to think about those individual people before he or she put them in that big spectacular setting.
Right.
Yeah. And coming back to the
I
treatment.
think if you're writing a treatment, maybe you're doing that to get to know your people better.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. What should be in the treatment is you want to set the scenario and the scene, but you also should be starting from moment one by introducing your lead character that we're going to be following throughout this, and really let us know the deeper parts of this character. And once you have them hooked on, oh, this is an interesting character I haven't heard before, they will be paying attention and they will want to know what happens to this person. And if you look at any of your favorite movies and just sit there and go, why do I like this movie so much? It's not going to be because of like the gunslinging scene. It's going to be because of the character who's set up at the beginning and who you want to follow through this journey that they're on. And that has to be made really, really
otherwise you don't care.
quickly in the
Right.
No.
Yeah.
The number 1 and 2 reasons why I don't watch something is I'm not interested in the subject matter. Or I don't care how good it is, I'm just not interested. Or I start watching it and I just don't care.
No,
I don't care and I stop. I've tried to watch The Theory of Nothing, The Theory of Everything 4 times. And I keep stopping because I just don't care.
Right.
And I don't even know why I don't care, I just don't. And it's an acclaimed film, so who knows?
Right. Yeah, there's something for everyone, as they say. And so I want to give this a third go, speaking about journeys. And I think we were able to actually get Saran to join us in our little Lord of the Rings trek here. Let's see if we can bring her into the broadcast. Saran, can you hear us now?
I can hear you. You're low. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly, and we can all hear you excellently.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear? Yes. We can hear you.
Oh, great.
I was quoting you.
Okay, so I have to do like a speech here, right?
Yes. So now you actually, you know what? This is what I'm going to do.
Okay.
I'm just going to.
Should I want to start asking me a few?
Oh yes, I do. I do want to start asking you. Are you, Saran?
Frozen.
Oh, I'm frozen. Okay, let's try this. We're going to just
do you
ask.
Want me just to start talking about what I know about treatments?
No. What I want you to start saying is give us just a little bit of a background on yourself and sort of the work that you do, and then we'll bring the panel back in.
Okay. My name is, and I'm going to talk fast. I'm from New York, so it's easy. My name is Sara Ann Fox. Everybody calls me Saran, never Sara. I was a feature film development executive at 20th Century Fox with Michael Gruskoff, producer of Young Frankenstein, among others. It was a time of great development. I was the lion at the gate. He never read anything I didn't give him. I gave him 1 script out of 100, 150. I read 1,000 scripts. We developed 20 of them. 3 got made into movies. My favorite year, Quest for Fire, and a little movie called Werner Herzog's Nosferatu. And we published 3 books, and it was the best job I ever had. I have my own business working with writers as a passionate advocate for the material, and I'm also a screenwriter for hire. There you go. And I live in Los Angeles.
That is what I call an amazing elevator pitch, which is the section of this that we were actually going to start to get into, which is pitching.
Absolutely.
And I think, everyone in the audience wants to hire you now because you did such a great job in such a short amount of time and establishing your character. I have a lot to
say about treatments too, because I've written them and I've read them. I've written them and I've read them.
What makes a good treatment and what makes a bad treatment, Saran?
Well, can I back up a little bit and talk about what treatments are for? Is that okay?
Yeah. Why do we need one, or do we?
Okay, because I need to do an introduction, what I believe and what my experience with treatments are for. If you are an aspiring screenwriter and a producer or a studio exec has not read a script of yours, but you've been pitching, and then you hand in a treatment, chances are they won't want to read it. In my experience, treatments are 2 things. One is for a tool for the writer, and it can be anything. It can be a series of just prose. It can have backstories on the characters. Well, I wrote 2 treatments last year based on true stories that led to me being hired to write scripts. And what I did was they were 55 pages single-spaced, and there were like 10 scenes in there to show that I could write. No backstory, just the story straightforward from beginning to end. That was what my client asked for because they had read my other screenplays and knew I could write. So as aspiring screenwriter would use it for their own purposes and not show it to anybody. If you have a reputation, if you come in and they've seen 3 of your scripts or you've had a film made and they ask you for a treatment because they want to flesh everything out, great. What makes a good treatment? Whatever works for the project to bring it to the page, the screenplay page. It is a very personal tool. There are no rules. You can write a treatment without scenes in it if you don't want to, or if it's not required. I did it to showcase how I would write scenes for this script so my clients would be more comfortable. So treatments are not, and when I was in development, what I wanted, even from screenwriters I knew were good, and I'd read their scripts, I either wanted you to come in and pitch or send me a screenplay. Because what treatments are, they're basically storytelling, and they're not showing me what you can do on the page. So that's my experience with treatments and my caveats about treatments. So there you go.
Love it.
And
Okay.
A good one, what a bad treatment is something where you sit down to write your script and you realize you've done it all wrong, that you need to change the story. And it's just a blueprint.
Yeah, it's a blueprint. It's more of an internal technical tool, almost like a beat sheet for a writer, essentially, right? That's what I'm understanding. So yeah, absolutely. So, it could be a way to summarize your story for an executive, like you said, but maybe not the most important and necessary sales piece to get your story across, which I think is interesting.
Your executive or your producer may ask you for one. I mean, everybody's different. Everyone is different. A producer who has only seen you write, hasn't really, well, first of all, you're not going to go in and pitch if you don't have a screenplay to show as audition. I mean, I wouldn't want to meet with a writer unless I knew they could write, Right. So that's job one. So you're ahead of the game if you're in the room, Right. They may ask you for a treatment. They may want their director of development to work with you on a treatment so that you don't go cold to the first page. It all depends. Now, already established screenwriters like Aaron Sorkin, et cetera, they work however they work. They don't need to follow, be at the behest of any studio executive or producer because they're way above the crowd and nodding heads. But if you got a foot in the door, follow direction, but don't come in cold with a treatment when what they want is a screenplay, and ask for information. And when you are writing on spec, a treatment might help you. You might just bullet point your plot. You might just do an outline. First of all, I tell writers, here are the rules, break them. Here are the rules. There are no rules, So, and Kate is not. And Kate is actually a client, a good friend of mine.
I don't know if Saran remembers this story, but we met at the Astro Diner, which is our usual hangout. And I had a character that I had created for a thing. And I loved him as a character, but he wasn't right for the thing. So I'm trying to figure out a story to tell about him, to tell the same sort of story I wanted to tell about him, but in a different setting. And I brought her a summary of a thing, and I imposed it upon her. And she told me it was terrible. And I'm like, I know it's terrible. I don't know how to fix it. And so then we talked some more. And then she gave me the idea, the why don't you do this idea that became the first movie I wrote, that became the movie that got optioned and she worked with me on. So I vomit drafted out my summary and it was just wretched. But at least I got it out of my head and unclogged the pipes.
Absolutely.
And then she was able to say, I like the character, but this sucks.
Right.
Maybe you should. And then we have a conversation about other things, and maybe you should try this. Oh, yes, Ethan.
Ethan, jump in there.
Oh, I just wanted to say that the conversation between Sara and Kate right now is something really important for everyone in attendance to pay attention to. This was a writer getting not the kind of feedback that they probably wanted, but they listened and they had the conversation. And that conversation led to a discovery, which then allowed Kate to take her project to the next level. So nobody ever wants notes they don't want to hear. This is part of what the rest of your life will be working in this business. However, you have to take a second to actually think about the notes. And you may still not agree with them because they betray something about your character or whatever, but then you didn't communicate your character to the fullest extent in the first place.
Writing
so always
is a two-way street. If
yes,
you're not being
absolutely.
understood, it's because you're probably not making yourself understandable. Yes. Whatever's in your head doesn't matter. If you can't get it out, and the other person
Absolutely.
isn't getting it, then you're failing. And that's same for journalism, essays, term paper. It doesn't even matter.
Absolutely.
And I also have to say that, and I know that my fellow writers, I'm a story editor and a writer. I work with writers and I'm a writer. And when I write, I need me. I need someone like me. But what are story conferences? They're a series of 2 words, what ifs. It's what if he's taller than everyone? What if he's black? What if he's white? What if he's Latino? What if the maid did it? And it's always a series of what ifs. And so it's a magical and mystical is the creative process. When you sit down to write, something takes over, but you need to come prepared, whatever that is. And years ago when Rocky came out, my late husband was a screenwriter, a very fine one. And we saw the movie, we loved it. And Stallone was on an interview show and he said, I wrote this script in 3 weeks. And my husband yelled at the TV, yeah, but you've been thinking about it for a year. So the thing is chances are, whatever Stallone had, note cards or treatment or whatever, when he sat down to write, he was ready and it all came out of him, but he just didn't think of it the night before,
Thinking is also writing. Thinking is writing.
Right.
And writing is not just typing.
Absolutely.
You have to,
I think, therefore I am, right?
Well, you're playing out scenarios in your head. You're like thinking or you're asking what if questions or what questions, which is sort of good. I learned that as a journalist, to ask questions. And it's like, well, why is this character doing this? What's their issue? I want them to do mean things, say. But why are they doing mean things? Are they just nasty, which is boring actually? Or is there some reason why they're doing mean things? And then that sends you down another whole path of understanding, answering that question. Like, why is this character so mean? Takes you down a whole path of understanding who that person is. It's like, I've read like a ton of Stephen King books. He needs an editor and his endings are often giant spiders. But his characters are indelible. And I got to interview him once and I said to him what I've said about him, that almost everybody dies in your books.
Right.
But nobody dies a stranger. Everybody gets a moment of humanity, like the traveling salesman crushed by the Coke machine and Tommyknockers. I still remember the traveling salesman and his little story, or the little backdrop to the dog in Gerald's game. He took a whole chapter telling you about this dog. So by the time the dog enters the main story, you're totally invested in this dog.
And you know what, Kate,
and that stuff is genius.
Can I piggyback on that? And I think Ethan might agree, and you as a writer will agree. The treatment is a tool. A treatment is a tool to open you up, to tell the story beginning, middle, and end. I mean, just a treatment, most treatments. The thing is that it's not written in stone. And then when you sit down, and when I start to write, and I know Kate, what you just brought up was that someone's doing nasty things because they had a bad childhood or whatever, is your characters start talking to you. Because they're everybody you've ever known, loved, hated, married, divorced, given birth to. They are everybody in your universe, past, present. And so my experience as a writer is my characters are a lot smarter than I am because they access parts of me I'm not even aware of. What they are is I'm more mature than they are. They want to stay in scenes forever. They want to keep talking. And it's my job to get in and get out as fast as possible. But just remember, everybody who's attending, that treatments are tools. And if you don't want to write a treatment, you don't have to, but you might try one just to see if you can get your story on paper and see what comes up as you're writing. Because as you know, when you're in the moment, you're really not in control. You are and you aren't. You go into a scene saying, in this scene, this should happen. And then in the middle, one of your characters starts saying something and you go, oh my God, that's my father. Oh my God, I got to go in this direction. And then the next day, the rubber really hits the road, or whenever you sit down to take a look at what you've written. And then the writing is in the rewriting because you start shaping things because you have some detachment. So
absolutely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so I just want to spend the last few minutes of the panel here going over another sort of toolkit in the arsenal of the writer, which is the pitch. We haven't had too much time talking about that. We saw Saran, as the pro that she is, give a great job pitching herself. But what goes into a good pitch, and how important is that? Even perhaps more important than the treatment or a lot of the other materials that you put together.
I will start. At the bottom of my email, I say, I have a thing that says the 4 most powerful words in English are "tell me a story," and that's from Pat Conroy, who wrote The Prince of Tides, or as Barbara Streisand put it, The Prince of Tides. And then, according to Saran, the second set of 4 words that are the most important are, first, tell me a story, and the other 4 are, and then what happens? That's it. So when you're pitching, pretend you're around the campfire, pretend that the studio exec or producer is a 4-year-old and you're trying to get their attention and calm them down. But what you have to do is tell a story in such a way that if you get up to go to the John in the middle and you open the door after you're done and they should be standing there saying, and then what happens? That's the essence of a pitch. There's all kinds of pitches. There's an elevator pitch, there's what I call the dinner party pitch, and then there's the actual pitch in the room. And you should have 3 pitches. You should have your 30-second elevator pitch. You should have the one where you're sitting next to someone at dinner and they say, well, what are you working on? And you don't want to be like a boring dinner guest. So you have like 2 or 3 minutes, then they can ask questions. And then there's the one where you're in the room. Don't bore them. Keep them interested, and that's it. That's
right.
it. Tell a great story. And it's not easy. It's not easy to talk about your own stuff because you know it so well. I had to pitch something to somebody yesterday and I was like, and it was okay because it wasn't, nothing was on the line, but I realized it's a discipline.
Yeah.
I'm sure, Ethan, that you know about that.
Yeah, I mean, I before COVID, I mean, I was out pitching, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times a month. I mean, it's like it's kind of like doing stand-up. Like you have to get your repetitions in, and the more you do it, the better you are, to the point where my manager is very smart every time we take something out, where he will literally set up meetings with companies that he knows won't buy it, just because he knows we can workshop it, because then we're going in, we're seeing the reaction that they have in the room, and then we're going, okay, this is what worked, this is what landed, this is what engaged them. Boom, revise.
I love that.
Yeah, and you're literally doing it like developing, a 1-hour stand-up routine where you're like trying to evolve this pitch so that everything is so dialed in. And we did that with my Netflix show, where we went out and we just pitched around a bunch of places before we ever took it to anyone who probably would have wanted to make it. And it helps immensely. And that's, again, kind of to what Saran was saying, as far as the tool of it all, that having the 30-second pitch and having the dinner party pitch and then having the full-on pitch are all different aspects of, oh my gosh, this person does what? Okay, I'm going to grab them right now and I'm going to hook them with this. If you get that hook, then you're going to have the opportunity to kind of expand on it. But again, be open to hearing the feedback and reading the room, seeing what works, and then revising the pitch so that the next person, if that person doesn't buy it, the next person who opens up and gives you the opportunity, you'll be that much better and that much closer to having that perfect pitch for them to hear.
Yeah, like training at the gym.
How much water do you drink during this whole process?
A lot. Exactly.
Awesome.
Free bottle of water at every place you pitch.
Right.
Yes. There's traffic in LA even with COVID. So
absolutely.
You sold a series and you're well hydrated. So.
There you go. Well, staying hydrated and staying in the game. So I want to welcome back the full team now. Let me see if we talked about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Let's see if we can put the full Avengers together now.
Yes.
There he is.
And there's Joe Garcia. Joe, sound check.
Sound check.
That's been the running joke. But Joe, so you came in at a good time because you've been pitching today. You've been receiving pitches. We're talking about the pitch. What makes the perfect pitch? And we've heard about many different kinds of pitch. The elevator, the dinner party, the real pitch, the pitch that leads to the pitch. What is your idea of a good pitch?
The one thing you forgot or has not been mentioned is what I'm calling the escalator pitch, which is you chance into somebody that you have no right to chance into. And I have a friend of mine out in LA whose superpower is he goes, to a Dodger game, and who's did he sit next to? Oh, the head of development at Cinemax. Just he has that power. Anyway, you need to be able to hook somebody literally within 20 seconds. And
then you need your tagline.
Well, this is all. But one of the things that you have to internalize your material so well that you're actually channeling your own material rather than let me tell you what I think of. No, just go into that mode. And I know that Ethan, who has a background in stand-up and improv, and I have a background in stand-up, it comes to the point where it is such second nature, almost first and a half nature, to just go into that story. And to me, what makes any flavor of pitch just stand out is you're a storyteller. Tell the story.
Mhm.
Is it a story worth telling? And are you telling it well? If you do those two things, you are unstoppable. You are undeniable. And if you're not represented, agents will have a knife fight to represent you. You can do those two things.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank
Well, I
you.
And
listen
to
to a lot
Joe's
of
point-
podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and you have no special effects.
Yeah.
You have no special effects. You have no visuals.
Yeah.
You have nothing but people telling their stories and the narrator.
Mm.
And I am hooked on the
Yeah.
best ones. We all know that was when Serial came out.
Mhm.
That is, it's pure, like sitting around the campfire storytelling.
Yeah.
Just from their brain into your brain, and there's no mediation except of little sound effects.
And you know what I
Yeah.
believe? You know what I,
You
be-
can
I
do
believe?
that. You can write a screenplay.
Sure.
I also believe that the beats of storytelling are in our DNA, and
Mm.
that if you
Oh, for
can
sure.
access that,
Mhm.
because that's why in most films the inciting incident happens between 15 and 20 minutes. It's sort of like the stranger comes to town after the world is set up. So there's no mistake. That's not an accident that happens. So if you can
Right.
access that childlike part of you that loves to hear and tell a good story, and don't bring in extraneous things, just tell the bones of the story in the best way that you can. And reminder, Jose, as a story editor, I would love that people who are attending to know how to contact me in case they are interested in my services. So let me know how to
Absolutely.
do that.
Yeah, we're gonna wrap up in 1 minute. We have time for just one question from
Can
the
I-
audience. Ethan,
Sorry,
go ahead.
before we do, just really quickly, the other thing that we haven't really touched on is if you get that meeting or if you have that opportunity to sell something to someone, don't be the crazy, manic, crazy person screaming something at them. Like, be calm, be casual. You should know that you have a good story to tell, because if you come at them with that frenetic, oh my God, energy, that will turn them off before they even hear the story. So you
The
want
body
to come
language
into
to
it.
that is this.
Body language, yes.
Yeah.
So take a
like
deep
they're
breath.
backing away.
Yeah.
Yeah, and take a
Yes,
deep
walk it-
breath and know your story's good, and just walk up and
You want-
try.
you-
And if you fail, you fail. You'll find somebody else to hear it. You know.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Walk
That's
in like
good.
you have something that you know something they don't, and you have something
Yep.
they want.
They're
Yeah.
making
Mhm.
chairs,
Between-
and you're
Yeah,
the wood.
That's
Without
right.
the wood, you don't make any chairs.
Yes.
It's amazing to me that like the chair makers of the entertainment industry consider the wood to be the lowest priority. No proper chair makers. You don't have the wood, you don't make some chairs.
That's
You're the
absolutely
raw
right.
material that runs this entire
and
industry.
one-
And if you got
one more
a
thing.
good hunk of timber, take it in there and give it your best shot.
One more thing.
don't
Just
hit 'em
remember
with-
that a pitch meeting is an audition for a relationship.
Right.
Chances are they won't go for your story, but if you are a good writer and they know that, and you show up like a mensch, like a grown-up, and act like a grown-up and tell a story that you are auditioning for a relationship, because 6 months down the line they'll remember you. They may need you for a rewrite or hiring to write a screenplay. You just never know. Hollywood is a town built on relationships. They're everything.
So that
I
first
used to
pitch is
tell-
like a first date almost.
That's
It is
right.
a
Yes.
That's right.
I used to tell publicists all the time, learn to take no for an answer,
Mhm.
because it could turn into yes in 2 hours or tomorrow
Mhm.
or next week. But if you drive me cuckoo, then I'm just going to avoid you because life's too short for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been a great session, and this session was way too short, speaking of, and I wish we had more time. But Saran, I know you wanted to say something about your services. So for the audience that's looking to get some more one-on-one attention, the great work that obviously we've seen she's done with Kate, as well as her client, tell us a little bit more about how we can get in touch with you.
Okay, everybody have a pencil or they're typing because I can't put it up on the screen, obviously.
I think everyone's just on their iPhone.
They're on their iPhone. Type this in. My website is www.fox-editswork.com. C-O-M. Fox-editswork.com. It's plural in edits. fox-editswork.com. You can leave a message for me at 323-460-2434. That's 323-460-2434. And my email is on my website.
Perfect. So
And
I
you
just
can
went ahead
always
and
contact Jose if you are desperate or you lost
yeah,
your phone.
and yeah, obviously through the MMFM network, you can also get in touch with us. And I already also put your
Thank you
website
for
on
that,
the
Jose. Thank you
absolutely.
for everybody. I'm so sorry that I missed the first part and all your brilliance, but I'm so glad that Al, thanks to Al, I was able to get in.
Absolutely.
And if you want to follow, and if you want to find me on social, it's super easy. My Facebook page is called Cato Hair Writes, all one word. My Twitter is called Cato Hair Writes. My Instagram is called Cato Hair Writes.
Consistent. And she's a great writer.
Yes.
And everything I write journalistically is at Authory. That's like author with a Y. Authory.com/Cato Hair.
Got it. Ethan, Joe, any socials or anything if folks want to follow you?
I'm just on Instagram, Ethan Banville, and I think we're going to have a big announcement for my show sometime in the coming months. We're supposed to do it at a big event coming up, but of course, COVID canceled that. So I will keep MMFM crew posted, so you guys can all hear about that when it comes out. And yeah, exciting stuff. Hopefully next year we'll all be in person, and I can kind of share more of the details of that when it happens.
MMFM wants the exclusive, Ethan, to speak like a journalist.
I told you, man. You'll get it. You'll get it.
Great. Joe, any parting words?
Well, just look for tablereadtheater.com. That's coming within the next couple of weeks, and there's going to be a lot more exciting stuff there that'll take you to other projects that are on the brink of me being able to talk about them in public.
Can you repeat that link again?
Table Read Theater, theater, T-E-R, not R-E.
Yeah, the American spelling, right?
I'm not crazy about the American spelling, but that's what it is. Tablereadtheater.com, and it'll be a platform for people to submit their material so we can give them a professional table read for them to bring to their representation and to forward to people in the industry.
Awesome. Well, guys, this has been a great session. We are out of time. We've provided all the information. We'll get you in touch with any of the audience members that want to follow up with all of you. And thank you all so much for your time, your talent, your knowledge, and your passion.
Love Thanks. You, mean it.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Love you guys. Keep writing. Love
Bye.
it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Jose. It's awesome.
Yes. Take care, guys. Bye. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was an awesome panel, but please stay tuned because we do have one more session. It's our big one of the day, the keynote, 5 p.m. We have Brenda Gilbert, the co-founder of Bronze Studios, which is an incredible company out of Vancouver, who is now basically worldwide, international. They're in Los Angeles, they're in London, they're in New York, they're everywhere and doing such amazing work. And speaking of amazing work, of course, we always have to thank our team here at MMFM and Camicol and Patty Arias, who's kicking ass over there, and Amber and everyone here as part of the team of Camicol. Joe Chi, the president, everything that the chamber does, the Board of County Commissioners, Miami-Dade County. We want to thank our partners at the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau, Stage 10, King Events, Oportunidad Miami, who's working on our website, and so many more folks that are doing such a great job sponsoring and making this event possible at no charge to you, the audience, for this next day plus. So please stay tuned. We'll be back at the top of the hour at 5 p.m. sharp with Brenda Gilbert from Braun. Until then, just go ahead and mingle a little bit in the Biltmore bar, our little virtual bar, where we will be having a virtual happy hour right after Brenda Gilbert wraps her conversation. We are going to go straight to that. So I really hope that you guys stick around, and we'll see you back here at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard, Eastern Daylight, Miami time in just a few. Thank you so much for tuning in.
two ladies.
1 second.
Oh, he's dark.
Saran.
Kate O'Hare.
Okay, okay. But that Saran is funny.
She's hilarious.
I like her. I could